My name is Caleb, and I've spent my entire adult life trying to outrun a shadow. Not just any shadow, but the long, oppressive shadow cast by my family's history, rooted deep in the cold, dusted hollows of West Virginia. My family, the Blackwoods, weren't just residents of the isolated mining town of Solitude Creek. They were its founders, its patriarchs, its keepers. A legacy I wanted no part of. I lived in the city, surrounded by the anonymous comfort of concrete and steel, and I hadn't set foot in Solitude Creek in over a decade. That changed with a phone call. My grandmother, the stoic matriarch of the Blackwood clan, had passed away as the last of my direct line. I was expected to return for the funeral and to handle her estate. The drive back was like traveling backward in time. Paved highways gave way to winding country roads. Cell phone service vanished, and the lush green mountains closed in around me, swallowing the sky. Solitude Creek itself was just as I remembered. A handful of weathered, clapboard houses, a general store, a white-spired church, all nestled in a narrow valley that seemed to perpetually lie in shadow. The air was different here, heavy with the scent of damp earth, coal dust, and something else, something ancient and mineral. The townspeople faces I vaguely recognized from my childhood greeted me with a strange mixture of solemn respect and a keen, watchful intensity. It wasn't welcoming. It felt like an appraisal. My grandmother's house was a time capsule of Appalachian austerity. It was clean, orderly, and suffocatingly silent. On her bedside table was a heavy, leather-bound journal and a sealed envelope with my name scrawled on it in her familiar, spidery script. This was my inheritance, not money, not property deeds, but her final words and the town's true, unspoken history. The letter was brief. Caleb, the burden is now yours. The Keening Festival is next week. Do not shame our name. The traditions are not just memories. They are our survival. Read the charter, understand your duty. Confused, I opened the journal. The first pages contained a copy of the town's original charter, from the late 1800s, signed by my great-grandfather Jedediah Blackwood. It spoke of discovering a rich coal seam, but the language was odd, filled with cryptic, almost religious reverence for the mountain itself. He called the main coal deposit the Mother Vein, and referred to the earth as the heart of the mountain. Tucked behind the charter was the list she mentioned, titled The Founding Traditions of the Keening Festival. The tolling of the 5 bells. Throughout the festival week, the 5 iron bells placed at the valley's cardinal points must be rung in sequence at sunrise, noon, and sunset. The rhythm must be precise. It calms the earth. The salt and honey offering. Each family must leave a sealed clay jar containing pure salt and wildflower honey at the entrance of the old, sealed Blackwood mine. The jars must not be opened. It sweetens the mountain's dreams. The hour of the hush. On the final night of the festival, from the stroke of midnight until 1 a.m., absolute silence must be observed throughout the valley. No lights, no fires, no speech, no whispers. The town must become a ghost. It allows the heart to listen without being disturbed. I shook my head. It was folklore. Nothing more quaint. Creepy traditions born from the isolation and hardship of mining life. I was here for a funeral, not to participate in some backwoods pagan ritual. That night, I tried to sleep in my grandmother's bed, but the oppressive silence of the house was broken by a low, intermittent hum that seemed to come from the ground itself, a deep, resonant vibration that I could feel in my teeth. I dismissed it as old plumbing or seismic activity, common to mining regions. The next day, driven by a historian's curiosity, I delved deeper into the journal. The later entries were not quaint. They were terrifying. My grandmother's neat script became a frantic scroll. She wasn't just a town elder. She was a warden chronicling a lifelong struggle. May 12, 1983. The Henderson boy broke the hush, laughed on a dare from his friends. At 12:15, the tremors started almost immediately. Not an earthquake, but a shimmer in the air. By the morning, the boy was gone. His parents, they didn't remember having a son there. It was just an empty room in their house that they couldn't explain. October 26, 1991. The offering was neglected. Someone left an empty jar. That winter was brutal. The earth groaned and strange crystalline growths, like black quartz, began to sprout from the foundations of houses. We lost 3 miners to cave-ins, where the tunnels just sealed themselves. July 18, 2004. A tourist family, their car broke down. They thought the hour of the hush was a charming local custom to be ignored. They left their radio on. The music, it became discordant, warped. The vibrations were the worst I've ever felt. The family, they didn't vanish, they were rewritten. I saw the daughter. Her skin had the texture of shale, and her eyes were perfect multifaceted crystals. My blood ran cold. This wasn't folklore. This was a record of containment. The mother vein wasn't just a coal seam. It was a consciousness. A vast sleeping geological entity whose dreams shaped our reality. The traditions weren't rituals of remembrance. They were a finely tuned system of appeasement, a fragile truce between the town and the gods, sleeping beneath its feet. My ancestors hadn't just founded a town. They had built a cage around a cosmic horror, and my family held the key. The Keening Festival began. The town transformed. The air grew thick with a tense, reverent energy. I watched as families, their faces grim, dutifully left their jars of salt and honey at the entrance of the old, sealed Blackwood mine, a dark maw in the side of the mountain that was covered in strange, crystalline growths. The 5 bells began their tolling, a discordant, mournful sound that echoed through the valley. And with each sequence, the low hum from the earth seemed to subside. For a while, I felt like a man in a dream. I was an outsider, a non-believer, yet the mounting evidence in my grandmother's journal and the palpable fear in the eyes of the townspeople were undeniable. The final night arrived. A heavy, oppressive silence fell over Solitude Creek. As midnight approached, every light in every house was extinguished. The world was plunged into a profound darkness, the likes of which I had never experienced. The hour of the hush was about to begin. I was in my grandmother's living room, peering through a crack in the blinds, my heart hammering against my ribs. The town was a landscape of absolute black. Then a pair of headlights appeared at the end of the valley road. A car moving slowly. its radio playing soft rock music that cut through the sacred silence like a knife. I saw figures emerge from the houses, not running, but moving with a slow, dreadful purpose. They tried to wave the car down. It was a young couple, probably lost. They stopped rolling down their window, their laughter echoing unnaturally in the stillness. They thought it was a joke, a local prank. They refused to turn off their music. The townspeople simply melted back into the shadows, their faces masks of pure primal terror. The couple was on their own. The church bell tolled midnight. The hour of the hush had begun. The car radio continued to play, and then the humming started. It was different this time, not the low, stable hum from before, but a dissonant, grinding vibration that rose from the very bedrock of the earth. The air began to shimmer like heat haze on asphalt. The soft rock music from the car radio began to warp, the singer's voice stretching into a horrifying, inhuman drone. I watched, paralyzed with terror, as the world outside my window began to glitch. The texture on the old oak tree across the street flickered, its bark momentarily becoming a smooth, obsidian-like crystal before snapping back. The tourist couple, now outside their car and panicking, began to change. The man's arm elongated, twisting at an impossible angle. His skin lost its color, replaced by the gray-faceted texture of granite. The woman screamed, but her scream was a chorus of shattering glass. Her hair solidified into thin, crystalline threads that caught the faint starlight. They weren't being attacked. They were being curated, corrected, rewritten into a form that was more pleasing to the dissonant dream of the mountain. A shockwave of pure energy, visible as a ripple in the very fabric of space, pulsed from the direction of the old mine. The world outside my window dissolved into a nightmare of impossible geometry and shifting, crystalline landscapes. When the church bell tolled 1 o'clock, the humming stopped. The world outside snapped back to normal. The trees were trees, the road was asphalt, but the car and the couple were gone. In their place on the side of the road was a single beautiful, terrifying statue. It was carved from a single piece of dark, smoky quartz depicting two figures clinging to each other, their faces frozen in expressions of eternal, silent agony. The hush was over. The price for its disturbance had been paid. I stumbled back from the window, my body trembling uncontrollably. I looked down at my own hands, expecting to see them shaking. But I saw something else. Under the skin of my right hand, a faint geometric pattern was glowing with a soft internal light. A delicate, beautiful crystalline lattice was growing, weaving itself into my very flesh. I finally understood the full weight of my inheritance. This town was in my blood. The pact was in my DNA. I could never leave Solitude Creek. The warden was dead, and it was my turn to keep the traditions, to appease the sleeping god, to carry the curse until the day the mountain decided to rewrite me. 2.